Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, GORDO Gambles, and welcome back to the full card breakdown. This time for UFC Atlantic City, we have ourselves 14 fights capped off by a very fun main event between Manon Fiorot and Aaron Blanchfield, which is what is a pretty good card entertainment-wise. A lot of action, like I said, 14 fights, and I kind of really want to jump into that. Before we do so, I just want to reiterate, I do now have premium podcast with Brett Apley over on Establish the Run. If you guys want the best DFS content, including not only podcasts, but ownerships, projections, amazing write-ups and rankings, that's where to go. Check them out there. Brand new Establish the Run MMA page. And your co-host for Establish the Knockout. But I just want to get that out of the way. Aside from that, best bets video are still here. Still do these free breakdowns here. Hit the like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. Let's do this. We get the fight night started with the 8-1 Loughran versus the 7-2 Angel Pacheco, and a pretty fun stylistic match with the night started. We have a large favorite here in Loughran, and you know what? Right off the rip, I tend to agree with the price tag. Angel Pacheco is making his debut here, but on Dana White Contender Series, he went out there, lost a war to Danny Silva, but got a contract based off his toughness, and that's what he is. He's a very tough fighter, absorbs a lot of damage, can be hit, but offensively, has volume, has cardio, has an 100% finish rate, and the guy is just a pretty entertaining fighter to back. He trains with Rob Font, Calvin Cater, a very good squad over there, and has really good hands to back, but defensively he lacks a lot of things. Although super durable, can be hit. And on the mat, I have seen him taken down and controlled a lot of times, something that I do think will be an issue right here. Loughran is making a second fight. He took on the very tough Taylor Lapillus in his debut, so this is a bit of a step down here in the right direction for him because he's still young. He himself is a very well-rounded prospect, but he loves those takedowns. Very aggressive with them, good top control, and good cardio to be able to shoot them over and over and over again. He fought a very, very good pace in his debut, and I do think he can hold that and use that to his advantage over multiple UFC opponents. I do think he has good cardio, that relentless takedown pace, good submission game, as well as some solid power in his hands as well, and some decent ground and pound. So as a whole, this seems to be a battle between a guy with a clear path to victory against Loughran versus a very tough fighter, usually leading towards a decision victory. The pick is actually going to be just that. I do think Loughran's able to go out there, utilize takedowns, utilize top control, utilize that very good pressure, and go out there and out-grapple Angel Pacheco to a decision. And I do think he's a very fun fighter to back at that. Of course, a positional ground and pound is always on the table, but I do think the cards lean towards Loughran here, and his ground attack, his pressure is something that should really take over here against a guy who can be taken down, such as Pacheco. On the feet, I do think it's a close matchup, but the clear path to victory is there for Loughran. And on DraftKings, he's someone I want to target as well. Second most expensive fighter in the slate for Loughran, a tough price to ask, but truthfully, a guy with a ton of takedown upside. We saw him go out there and push a takedown heavy pace against a guy in Taylor Lapillus last time, and I do think the takedowns will come a lot easier here. He has the ability to go out there and land 6-7 takedowns in a decision victory. That could score very well at potentially hindered ownership due to his high price tag. There are a lot of good DraftKings targets this week, but he's definitely one to be looking towards up top. I like his path to victory, and I do think he gets it done a lot of the time here this weekend. Next up, we have the 10-2 Andre Petroski versus the 7-3 Jacob Malkoun. What is a wrestler's delight? Andre Petroski just suffered his first loss to a guy there in Michel Pereira, but has historically been a very, very solid wrestler, averaging nearly 4.5 takedowns per minute. If you think that's impressive, 7.2 takedowns per minute for Jacob Malkoun. Both these guys are very, very solid wrestlers, but bring a different approach to the wrestling game plan. Jacob Malkoun is a guy who was able to fight like that for all 15 minutes, land a ton of takedowns, rinse and repeat, very good entries, very good control, very good top position. His striking durability, not necessarily there, but it doesn't really matter when he's on your back, when he's shooting double legs, when he's able to get them as much as he can. He is a very, very solid wrestler. Petroski's approach is more so blast, double, ground and pound you out. Doesn't have the best cardio, although he can fight through adversity, can be stuck in his back in his own right. And although he has a good submission game, isn't that same cardio or repeat takedown threat. He's more so blast, double, lay on top, try to pound you out. And those are two different styles. I think the bigger, more physical fighter here is Andre Petroski, but the guy who I think can sustain a high wrestling pace for 15 minutes is the big guy Jacob Malkoun. I think it's pretty simple. Andre Petroski inside the distance, taking advantage of that weaker durability of Malkoun that I've tried to expose before, or a guy, Jacob Malkoun, just taking over down the stretch, either getting a late finish or going out there just dominating 15 minutes of wrestling the same way he's done to Razak Al-Hassan or other opponents he's managed to win by decision. Either way, it makes up for a very, very interesting matchup on DraftKings. I think when it comes from the betting perspective, I don't really know if I want to pick a side too much. I think they're both their paths to victory are alive here, and I don't know if I want to pay the minus 200 price tag for Malkoun, who I still think is very hard to trust with his limited durability. But DraftKings is fun. I mean, he scored 131, 129, 114 in his 3 wins in the UFC. Those are incredible scores for Jacob Malkoun at 9K. He is very alive to go out there, rinse and repeat, and tire out Petroski on his way to another big win. Whereas Petroski's scores himself are not that bad. He scored 106, 117, 91, 104, and then 78 in his last one there, but still a guy with a lot of upside in his own right. I do think if Petroski wins this fight, it's going to come early, and it's going to come with finding the questionable durability of Malkoun in the button. power shot in the early round, or potentially a submission. Malkoun puts himself in the wrong places. But those are more limited outcomes. I actually see the most likely path to victory here being Malkoun utilizing his cardio, pace, and pressure en route to a decision win, to which to score well as well. Either way, it's a fight I'm looking to target from both sides. The pick is going to be Malkoun, although I do not falter anybody for taking the shot at Petroski, being a big underdog, having his own path to victories. Either way, phenomenal matchup, and it should be a fun one to watch. I'm picking Malkoun. Next up, we have the 8-2-2 Melissa Gatto versus the 8-0 Victoria Dudakova. And if you guys have been following the channel for a while, I think you guys know my stance on this one. I'm not the biggest Dudakova fan. I mean, don't get me wrong, horrible bet, but I bet Estela Nunes over Dudakova. If that doesn't tell you where I stand in this matchup, then I don't know what else was. I think Dudakova is very raw, and although she's 8-0, is still a prospect who has a lot to improve on. She held the squeak out wins over Estela Nunes and Jinyu Frey. Whoop-de-doo. She's now getting a big step against a girl, Melissa Gatto, who I think is a true contender here. Dudakova has been able to really weight bully her opponents, take them down on the ground, and control them there. But she hasn't been able to be as good of a nail. She can be taken down of her own right, and her striking is still very, very green. She is extremely hittable. Now, against lower-level competition, that could work, but against Melissa Gatto, I do think Gatto's going to have a bunch of advantages here, whether it be being the more physical fighter of the two, whether it being the better striker, in my opinion, or having not only the more level of experience, but the ability to go out there and lay takedowns in her own right. The most important thing, too, is if Dudakova wants to go out there and take down Gatto, Gatto's going to be the best grappler she's ever fought. Gatto has a phenomenal bottom game, and she has the ability to go out there and threaten things that I think could put Dudakova in some precarious situations. All this to say is I think Gatto has a lot of advantages. Sure, is there a world where Dudakova is able to show a new level to her game? I mean, she's still young and beat Gatto. Of course, it's MMA, anything can happen, but I truthfully am pretty confident that Gatto gets the win here. I've been trying to fade Dudakova before, and I do think Gatto has the skill set to succeed, whether that be power on the feet, whether that be the better experience, or whether that be the better submission game or physicality on the mat. All things that point her way. I will be having a bet on Melissa Gatto. I do think she wins. DraftKings-wise, though, 8.5K, she is kind of tempting, because if I do think she has submission upside or finish upside, I mean, we've seen her go out there and put up 117 points before. That is not out of the blue, but this could also be a slower-paced one. If she wants to go out there and utilize her striking, I do think she's a better striker, and that could result to a 80, 90-point win, which wouldn't be as good on such a high-scoring 14-fight slate. I do think she is a mid-tier option. I don't mind her at all. 8.5K. I think she wins a lot. I think she's a phenomenal cash play as well. But when it comes down to winning tournaments, there may be other plays I like. She's a good contrarian pivot option, but not my favorite go all-in high ownership, although I do think she gets it done at a high clip. So give me Gatto. Let's just hope that there's not another arm break like Estela Nunes is. I do think she gets it done. Next up, 12-1 Ibo Aslan versus the 8-3 Anton the Pleasure Man Turkalj. Had to throw in the nickname there, but very, very fun matchup. And actually a rematch when these guys first fought. Ibo Aslan was beaten up pretty good, had a pretty good exchange there, and then one quick slip up, Turkalj takes a neck, and that's the one loss on Aslan's record. He has a chance to erase that here, though, with a fun rematch, and it is one that has a very closely lined fight. And I think it's a pretty simple one to break down. Early on, actually, as a whole, the better fighter is Ibo Aslan. Better power, I think he has better physicality, better defense, and better striking in general. But the guy with the better pace, pressure, and resiliency is a guy in Anton Turkalj. So it's either Ibo Aslan late, finishing the job that he wasn't able to in his first matchup, or Turkalj taking over down the stretch. Aslan's cardio is questionable, his grappling is questionable, his level of competition is even more questionable, but I do think there is a path to victory for Anton Turkalj. However, the guy who I see getting his hand raised in the night more often is Ibo Aslan. Phenomenal power on the feet, pretty good hips in that first level of takedown defense, and has his own offensive wrestling. He is a very physical creature, and we have seen Anton Turkalj go out there and, you know what, not fare well against that size. Additionally, we've seen Anton Turkalj be extremely hittable and have very questionable striking defense. Ibo Aslan's going to take advantage of that. He's a very powerful dude, and I do think he has round 1 KO equity. So it's probably Ibo Aslan round 1 or Turkalj round 3 if he's able to survive there. Although a path, I don't think it happens too often. I am picking Aslan, and I am pretty confident he gets it done here. Now, maybe confidence not the right word for such a low-level matchup. Both these guys have things to prove, but this is another fight that I really do want on DraftKings. 8.3K, 7.9K. Ibo Aslan is a power machine. When he wins this fight, it's typically going to come in the first couple minutes, first round, scoring anywhere from 90 to 120 points. I don't see much decision equity for Aslan. He is a very high round 1 or bust type of guy, in my opinion, and that score is phenomenal on DraftKings. Whereas Turkalj, although he hasn't won in the UFC before, we've seen when he's able to contend and make it out of that first round. And had 5 takedowns out there against Petrino, who's a really skyrocketing up the rankings now. But I do think if Turkalj wins, it's going to come at lower ownership, and it's going to be able to outscore many people in the slate, considering it will have to come with persistent takedowns and potential late finish upside. So either way, I'm going to want some of this matchup. I do really prefer the Aslan side, better athlete of the two, better striking, and overall just a guy who I see having more finish equity early on. I do think he gets it done. Because of that, I do really want him on DraftKings. But overall, a pretty fun fight. I just do think Ibo Aslan gets the revenge over the Pleasure Man. Next up, 7-1 Connor Matthews, 11-4 Denis Buzukja. Very close matchup, and this may be one of the harder ones I'm going to call in this slate. Both these guys have their flaws. Connor Matthews' level of experience is extremely low. Although he has very good volume on the feet, very good durability, it doesn't matter when you're facing cans and when we haven't really seen you extended too often. When we did see you extended, you got lit up like a Christmas tree to Francis Marshall there. So I do think that's something to take in consideration. Aside from that, though, on face value, looks extremely talented. Very fast hands, good durability, ability to mix it up on the ground as well. He does look like he's able to cover these boxes. Then Buzukja is on a bit of a slump recently. He shows that he has those skills fighting out of a good camp, but we've seen him be extremely hittable. He's been slower to the punch recently as well. And he is his guy with his own flaws. He does have a better level of competition. He does have proven cardio. He does have a good ability to clinch as well, along with some decent power on the feet, but he's not able to fill the gaps that much. You could have a ton of power in a decent clinch game, but how do you get to the clinch? Or where's your jab at? Where's your hand speed? And I don't think that he has the same overall well-rounded skill set. The question that comes down to, can I trust Connor Matthews? I mean, we haven't seen him go out there and beat anybody. We haven't seen him beat anybody of substance. And if that's the case, I don't know if I can trust his cardio. I don't know if I can trust his, let's say, resiliency, especially considering we haven't seen him tested too much. But I do think he has the skills here to have success. I do think Connor Matthews is going to be quicker to the punch. I do think he'll have some ground success. And I do think, in theory, he has the skill set to win this fight. However, considering I can't trust the cardio and level of experience, I won't be betting it. But I think, gun to my head, I'm going to have to pick him here. Buzukja is still dangerous. I do think this is a close 50-55, maybe 55-45 fight. But Buzukja is going to have to go out there, either land a power shot, utilize a jab, which I haven't seen him do too often, or look to cage control. And those are all things that I think, if they don't happen, Matthews is able to take advantage of. And in this spot, I will be picking him. Very close matchup. Could go either way, but gun to my head, I will pick Connor Matthews. DraftKings-wise, I can't get it too much. I mean, in theory, it could be fought at a high pace. In theory, Matthews all has the first-round knockouts, and we have seen Buzukja knocked out. I'd rather the underdog here, just because, he has finish equity, he has volume, we have seen go out there put a high pace, and he's at a salary relief. I do think he's a very live underdog, but as a whole, this one doesn't rate out as well. It is expected to go a bit later. Buzukja, 8.4K. I haven't seen him able to land that power shot. We've never seen Matthews knocked out, so a finish from Buzukja is not really a certainty. And when you're priced between Gatto and Aslan, who I've already talked about, I'd rather other options. So I prefer Matthews as a pick. I prefer Matthews on the DraftKings side, and overall not the best rated DraftKings fight, but considering the unknowns here, it could rate out to be a decent one down the stretch if the volume's there, if it's fought at a high pace, and if we can trust Matthews to live up to the hype that his first round finishes have gotten him. Next up, 8-6 Julio Arce versus the 11-4 Herbert Burns, and this is going to be a short one because it could be a short fight, let's put it that way. Herbert Burns making his return here, has not fought in a while. I have trusted him in the past, we're 1-1 backing him, but truthfully he's a one-trick pony. He has round one, incredible ground game, incredible power, but no volume, no resiliency, no cardio. He's the early Terrence McKinney. I mean, there was Herbert Burns before there was Terrence McKinney. I mean, he is the epitome of round one or bust. No cardio, can be knocked out, but what he does have is a very good ground game. So if he's able to get it there, he is ever dangerous to finish this fight. Julio Arce, I just think, has the overall better, well-rounded skill set. Has a phenomenal striking on the feet. He is a very, very crisp striker. Very good first level of takedown defense, and although he is coming up in weight here, has shown to compete in the ground, has shown the ability to be a tough, durable guy. He doesn't fit the mold that a guy like Herbert Burns beats. I mean, Burns has to go out there, get a round one finish, and I don't see that happening all too often. I mean, Arce's only been finished twice in his whole career, a knockout to Song Yadong, which there's no shame in that, and then a guillotine lost to Brian Kelleher back in 2016, right? So, been a long time since then, although there is a path there for Burns, and I do think, in theory, if he gets him down, he could threaten submissions. It's not very likely. No hot take here. I'm picking Julio Arce. I like his cardio, I like his striking, I like his ability to fight through adversity. I do think he should win this fight a lot of the time. DraftKings-wise, though, it's an interesting one. 9.5K for Julio Arce is a lot to ask. I mean, historically, he has not been a good DraftKings scorer. He has never eclipsed 100 points, and if that's the case, it's hard to get him for him at 9.5K. Doesn't have much grappling equity, although he does have KO equity. It could probably come in round two. That probably wouldn't score the best. He is a good contrarian play, not the best, focus up top. I do prefer other people. Down low, though, Herbert Burns is the ultimate punt play. 2 wins in the UFC, scored 110 and 98. Those are phenomenal scores for a guy who needs a first-round finish to win. I don't think he has the cardio to go all 15, so he needs an early finish or he's going to lose. 6.7K. I don't think it happens all too often, but when it does, should score north of 100. His path to victory is early success, and again, I don't see it, but he is someone who is definitely boom or bust. Let's put it that way. So fun fight, picking Arce. I do think it comes in later rounds when Burns tires out, but Burns path to victory, early success. Either way, should finish inside the distance, but maybe not the best option up top at 9.5K. Next up, 19-3 Werner Jandiroba versus the 12-3 Lupita Godinez. A very, very fun fight. I love Lupe. I mean, I've bet a lot on her in the past. She's been a core play of DraftKings of mine a ton. Canadian roots, phenomenal wrestler in her own right. And I do really like Lupe Godinez's style. She's been improving that with phenomenal hands training down there with Alexa Grasso. She's been rounding out her skill set because she does have phenomenal ground game, incredible strength in wrestling, and now with some better striking, she's been able to reel off some decent wins. Werner Jandiroba, I mean, make all the jokes you want about her appearance. She's a killer on the ground. Phenomenal submission game. I mean, there's only good things to say about her strength down there, about her ability to just snatch people's arms. Phenomenal BJJ fighter. And I do think, you know what, pure BJJ, she has the advantage in this matchup, although I think that's really where her advantages lie. I do think when we're looking at this matchup as a whole, Lupe has the edge. Not only is she the better wrestler, the two being the more physical fighter, but is the better striker. She's really been improving that. I do like her volume. I do like her technicality. I do think she's able to piece up someone in Werner who can be hit in the feet, doesn't the best strike in her own right, and who really is a one-trick pony on the ground. Although there is always an opportunity for ground success for Werner Jandiroba, I think the strength of Godinez is too much to be kept down there or even threatened down there. And I do think Godinez wins this fight at a pretty high clip. I like her striking, I like her physicality. I do think it should be something that propels her to victory here. Now, if that's the case, how much do I like this fight on DraftKings? Well, I don't like Lupe as much as I usually do. Usually when I like her, she's going out there, has the ability to land takedowns. Doesn't really have that in here, and I kind of compare it to her Ricci fight last time. She had to keep it up on the feet and outstrike her opponent, and she kind of has to do that here. And in doing so, she only scored 70 points. 70 points will not be enough here at 8.7K, and if that's the case, I don't want much of her. I almost kind of want the Jandiroba side. Although I'm not picking Jandiroba, and I do think her path to victory is limited, I do think it comes at an opportunistic finish. I do think it comes with potential grappling, and if that's the case, it'll score much better in my opinion. Like I said, I don't think it happens. I'm picking Lupe at a pretty high clip here, but the path to victory for Werner, I think, scores better in my opinion. And at 7.5K, you're getting some salary relief. As a whole, though, not a fight I'm targeting too often because I do think it's Lupe by decision, but should be a fun one. Let's go Lupe Godinez. Next up, 17-5 Nate Landwehr versus the 27 Jamal Emmers, and this one just has fight of the night written all over. I mean, Nate the Train Landwehr is a super fun fighter to watch. I love his style because he may not have the most defense, but he'll go forward. I mean, him and Trevor Peake would be a great fight. That's aside the point. Landwehr doesn't have the best technicality, but he will go forward, look to break you down the stretch. He's been able to do that before. Very well-rounded skill set. I mean, he has power on the feet. He has good volume. Like I said, good cardio, but also a sneaky good wrestling game. He's been able to break his opponents. The problem is he's getting a tough opponent to break here, Jamal Emmers. 20-7, he's not perfect by any means, but Jamal Emmers has that same well-rounded skill set that Landwehr does. Just I think a bit better. I think Jamal Emmers is a much better technical striker, let alone defensively. And on the mat, I do think Emmers is the more physical, better wrestler of the two, but potentially having him an edge there. You throw in the cardio, and I do think Landwehr may have a cardio and, let's say, have more dog in him, but Jamal Emmers' cardio is no joke at all. He does have the ability to fight for 15 minutes. You add all these things together, and I do think this is Jamal Emmers' fight to lose. But we've seen him drop the ball before. Jamal Emmers is not a very trustworthy guy. He's made a ton of lapses in judgment before. He has a ton of flaws. So I'm not saying by any means Emmers is a lock here because he does make these mistakes, but truthfully, he has a path. He is the better striker. He should be able to outpoint Nate Landwehr. Landwehr, although super durable and able to walk forward, has had his light turned off before, and I do think Emmers has the ability to outstrike him both technically and potentially throw in a knockout there as well. Additionally, if there's any grappling, I think Emmers can hold Landwehr down, take him down, and held him there. And if that's the case, I just think he has more paths. The line is about right. I'm not going to go out there hammer Jamal Emmers because he makes mistakes and Landwehr's a dog. But this is one I am picking him to win, and it should be a fun one at that. DraftKings-wise, it could have some potential. Historically, Emmers hasn't been the best DraftKings scorer, although he put up 130 points last time in a quick win bonus. Before that, 71 against Ashkabov. I mean, 188 against Kasher, but that really has not been the best DraftKings scorer. But this fight pace that Landwehr brings may make it for an interesting one. I do think a lot more people are going to be on Landwehr than Emmers, let's put it that way. And I mean, Landwehr has a ton of matchups where he's landed over 120 strikes, right? So if this is a matchup that is fought at a high pace, one where Emmers may have the edge, I do think he's going to go very overlooked in what is a star-studded slate here. I do think Loughran, Silva, Ruziboev, Algeo, Malkoun, Blanchfield are all going to get a ton of ownership. If that's the case, Emmers might go a bit overlooked here. So I do think he is someone who is more of a pivot play. If Landwehr fights at a high pace, he could be a slate breaker, but not my favorite target of them all. Again, like more of a contrarian play. Whereas Landwehr is 7.3K. I don't think he wins too often, but we have seen Emmers make a mistake before. In all Nate Landwehr's wins, he scored pretty decent. So he is a guy I'm looking to target, again, as a lower options. Again, I do like better underdogs here than Nate Landwehr, but he is a guy who is a dog, who will go there throwing a ton of volume, and in a win should score very well. The pick is Emmers. I just hope it's a fun fight here. Should be a good one. On to the main card. Actually, this one has Fight of the Night written all over it too. It should be a tough battle for that award this week. But 22-10, Chidi Njokuani, 13-5-1, Reese McKee. Face value says Chidi Njokuani, proven guy, should go out there and demolish a guy in Reese McKee who can't really pick up a win in the UFC. But I think it's a really close fight, and the line movement's kind of indicating that. Chidi Njokuani making a cut down to 170. He has not been the most trustworthy recently. Lost his last 3, and although to some very good opponents, you know what, he's been some bad looks in there, that's for sure. He's shown to give up before, has been the better hammer than he is a nail. And I do think although he has fight-altering power at every turn, is a guy who has his flaws in his striking defense, in his cardio, in his ground game. You know, Reese McKee is also a guy who has his flaws, let's put it that way. 100% finish rate, we'll give him his flowers where he's due, but a very hittable guy. Has been knocked out, but really has shown decent durability, able to go forward. Good frame for the division, but is a guy who needs to really drag his opponents to deep water, look to counter-strike them, and just be a better dog. And in this matchup, he may be the better dog, but on face value, I think the better fighter, technically, is Chidi Njokuani. He has more power. He's the more proven striker of the two, fought at the better level. I think he has more physicality, too, if he's able to make the weight accordingly. But this fight just really all depends on mentality. If we see Chidi out there and he's not looking good in round 1, he may take the easy way out and give up down the fight. And if that's the case, Reese McKee doesn't have power to do so. But at the best of their abilities, I do think Chidi Njokuani should be the favorite, and he is the side to be picking here. Once again, though, early finish upside is on the Chidi side. We've seen him put the power out on anybody, but if he falters down the stretch, you could maybe sprinkle the late props for Reese McKee because he has shown proven cardio, proven dog in him, and proven ability to fight through adversity. DraftKings-wise, though, another really fun fight to target. I mean, line movement makes it look like McKee's a great underdog, 7.6K. Although he's never won, his path to victory is probably making Njokuani quit, whether it be with power. 100% finish rate rates out well on DraftKings, 7.6K. He's a very, very live underdog, and actually one of my favorite underdogs. I do think he's able to win more often than a Jandiroba or a Dudakova and have one of the higher ceilings of underdog. Whereas you have a guy in Njokuani who I think also goes a bit overlooked, 8.6K line movement, still going the other way. In his 2 wins in the UFC, he scored 108, 130. So those are some good scores to go out there and look to back him at. I do think he's a sneakier option, round-wood finish upside, more of a GPP play. I think people like Blanchfield, Algeo are more consistent. But at 8.6K, I mean, you can't go wrong with taking the shot on a guy here who does have potential lower ownership and a lot of round 1 upside. Should be another fun fight. I think it's a very close one, but one where I will be siding with the more proven guy here in Chidi Njokuani. Hopefully he fights the best of his abilities. Next up, 18-7 Bill Algeo versus the 15-5-1 Canadian legend, Kyle Nelson. And I have no other way to put it than Kyle Nelson has cost me before. Let's put it that way. The guy used to be a very violent guy, fighting and ending inside the distance a lot of time, but he's kind of slowed these fights down, literally. I mean, that's his new style, slow the fight down. And all credit to him, he's winning fights like crazy now because of it. He's on a good run. And I have to give him his credit. He's been able to go out there and get the W. He's getting a tough challenge here, though, in Bill Algeo. And it's pretty simply, though, it's a fight that I don't think he's going to be able to slow down. Kyle Nelson has neutralized opponents, utilizing that long frame, utilizing potential wrestling, a long jab, and solid power. Whereas Bill Algeo doesn't care about that. Bill Algeo is a guy who's going to push forward, throw caution to the wind, and look to walk you down. Ton of volume on the feet, very good striker, and although he can be taken down, a very good get-up game, very good pace and cardio. And I do think that's a style that beats Kyle Nelson. I mean, we saw Billy Q beat Kyle Nelson very dominantly because of that, and Bill Algeo brings a very similar style to the table. Now, 100% there's a world where Kyle Nelson can neutralize Algeo. I mean, I haven't believed him before, and he's been able to go do it, right? Taking him down, slowing the fight down. But I really don't think he's able to slow down Algeo here. Algeo has phenomenal pace. I do think he's going to be the better, more active striker of the two, and his durability is on point, his cardio is on point. I do think he's able to pose a threat to Nelson that Nelson hasn't seen since that Billy Q way. Should be a very, very fun fight, but I will be siding with Bill Algeo here. DraftKings-wise, Algeo is very live, 9.1K. He has put up decent DraftKings scores before, winning, scoring 116 against Brown, 106 against Burns, 88 against Joanderson Brito, what is a very good win now. But he is facing a guy who does like to slow fights down. And without much grappling equity, he is a guy who potentially could maybe not live up to the potential. I mean, he's in the same price range as Silva, who has KO upside, Ruziboev has KO upside, Loughran and Malkoun, who has a ton of takedown upside. Although he's a guy who I think wins at a high clip, historically has been a very good scorer and is a great cash play, I think there may be better high upside scorers. And if he's going to attract a lot of ownership, I might stay away from that, facing a guy who is so known for neutralizing fights. Kyle Nelson, though, not a guy I want to get to at all. I mean, his last 2 wins, he scored 62 points at both of them. I mean, a very slow pace recently. Doesn't have much volume upside here. Doesn't have much, I don't want to say too much KO upside. Against a guy in Algeo is pretty tough. This is a fight where, although I think it's close, not a very good historical DraftKings score, I much prefer other underdogs this week. And as a whole, it could be one that potentially be overlooked. Try to get some leverage on the field, although Algeo does rate out okay. Pick is Algeo. Let's move on. Next fight up, 33-8-2, Nursultan Ruziboev versus the 9-1 Cedric Dumas. Fun fight. Ruziboev made his debut. I tried to fade him. Straight up I did. And he had a dominant win. He scored very well in the process. He's a guy who has a ton of experience under his belt. He's only 30 years old, but I mean, how often do we see 30-year-olds with 33 pro wins? He's a guy who I do not think is perfect, but is pretty dangerous. Really good opportunistic submission game, a ton of power in his feet as well. Has fought a very good level of competition. And although I think there's still some holes in his game, I do think he can be beat to the punch. I do think that his chin is still in question. Having been rocked in a few fights. He's a guy who has shown to be able to compete at a high level, who has shown a good finish rate, who has shown the ability to not only have grappling upside, but also a ton of power on the feet. We have seen him held down, and that is kind of a worry here, being held down, but Cedric Dumas doesn't rate out as the best fighter to do that. I mean, Cedric Dumas fought really close to that boy Zaitar, fought a weird performance against Cody Brundage. In his one loss, he was submitted by Josh Fram, a guy who I don't rate out too well, a guy who I think Ruziboev would smoke. You add in the legal trouble surrounding ST Dumas and all the questions about what's going on in his fight camp right now, and I do think it's only right Ruziboev is the favorite here. Now, to this extent, maybe not. I do think Ruziboev has some things to prove, but I do think Ruziboev has the power. I do think he has a potential submission game on the ground, and I just think that ST Dumas doesn't rate out as the best MMA fighter. Lacks a lot of technicality, lacks a lot of fight IQ, in my opinion. And although he has street fighting ability and the ability to go out there and knock someone's head off using his limbs, I do think he can be caught. I do think he makes a lot of mistakes on the ground, and I do think he gives up in fights he's losing. So this is a fight I'm going to be siding with Ruziboev. I get the shots on Dumas. I think the line is wide, but not a spot where I can trust this guy with my money, especially with this point in time. DraftKings-wise, I think Ruziboev has a ton of round one upside. He has shown to be a very dangerous fighter, a lot of finish wins. But it's such a star-studded state, so many potential high scorers that I don't know how much I'll get to. I mean, Dumas has been historically durable. Maybe I won't get to Ruziboev as much as I expect to, but still a very good option up top, 9.2K. A guy who scored 97 in his first win, there's no denying that. Power in his hands, phenomenal submission game. Gene Ruziboev, again, still a lot to prove. I think it's a very good matchup to download data on both fighters, but I do think Ruziboev's in a more comfortable situation with more paths to victory, and I do think he should be favored here. Next up, 23-10, Bruno Silva, 15-7, Chris Weidman. And this is one where I'm kind of conflicted in what to choose this matchup. I mean, the tape says Chris Weidman has a path. I mean, the tape says Chris Weidman, the All-American wrestler, a guy with a ton of ground success, can go out there and wrestle Bruno Silva. Right? Bruno Silva's been taken down in so many matchups to be controlled, not the very best off his back despite the black belt, and has holes in his game. And I do think Chris Weidman can have success doing so. But the guts, like, what are you doing? The guts, like, come on, Bruno Silva's going to go out there and maul Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman's chin and hand speed has not been on the right level recently. He got pieced up by Brad Tavares. Before that, was knocked out in 5 of his 6 fights before that. Luke Rockhold knocked him out, Yoel Romero, Gegard Mousasi. So was Reyes. I mean, the list goes on. The guy's chin is definitely in question, and he's been slower to the punch. One thing Bruno Silva has is fight-ending power. I mean, he went all 15 with Poatan there, a very dangerous fighter in his own right. And I do think the most likely outcome is Silva just blasts Weidman, unfortunately. As much as I don't want to admit it, he's able to go out there and do that. But the truth is, if Weidman goes out there and wrestles Bruno Silva for 15 minutes, you could very much win this fight. And it doesn't matter how old you are. If you're from bottom position, you can't get the same knockout or power that you need from Bruno Silva. So I do think it's a very interesting matchup, and I don't think the line should be that wide, but I will be siding with Bruno Silva. I do think his power is for real. I do think he has the edge in the striking, and he could go out there and very much knock out Weidman very early on. He has the power to do so. But I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket. I actually will have some Chris Weidman on DraftKings because at 6.9K, he has a ton of wrestling upside, and when he's won fights, has scored very, very well. Scored 89 against Akhmedov, 115 against Gastelum, 116 against Belfort. He has the ability to go out there and land a ton of takedowns. He's a guy who has a very good historical DraftKings takedown upside. And at 6.9K, he's a guy who I do think you can get some leverage on the field on, and at a pretty cheap salary go out there and do so. Flip side of things, though, Bruno Silva, when he wins, especially by KO, phenomenal scorer. 1-10 against Tavares, 108 against Wright, 102 against Turman. A ton of KO upside. He's won all of his UFC wins by KO, and I do think this could be another one added to the pile here. Very fun matchup, very close. I can see it going both ways, but the pick is Silva, younger fighter, ton of power. I just don't think it's the best matchup for Weirdman, although the path is definitely there. I want this fight as a whole on DraftKings, but give me Silva. Co-main event time, 22-9-1, Vicente Luque, 17-6, Njokuani Buckley. This actually is the hardest matchup for me to call on the card. Buckley, 17-6, a guy who I do think is making improvements. St. Louis boy, I actually saw him at Panda Express a few months ago. I just feel like I've been meeting a lot of these fighters down here, so a cool thing for sure. But very nice guy, has that incredible spinning ninja kick, whatever you want to call it. The guy's extremely talented, but he's been making improvements, and that's what you want to see. Is he's a guy who has been definitely ramping up his game, has shown the ability to wrestle recently, does have a lot of power, has shown good, let's say, durability, resiliency, and ability to be a dog out there as well. But definitely is a guy who can be hit, has been knocked out before, can be outstruck, and it just seems to be a guy who, although very dangerous, has his holes in all areas. I mean, he's not perfect, and although he's well-rounded, can be beaten by the experts of their craft. Vicente Luque is kind of the expert of the brawl, and we saw him get knocked out by Jeff Neal, which surprised to me. We saw him then utilize his wrestling a ton against RDA. But a guy who has been in so many brawls, but he's so tough, has so much power in his hands, and who typically is a guy who just wants to bang it out on the feet. He can be taken down in his own right, although he has a phenomenal submission game. He can be hit by everything, but he will probably out-volume you, and you have to really kill the guy if you want to get him out of there. So for 15 minutes, can Njokuani Buckley take down Luque? Is Luque shot? Those are a lot of questions I'm asking myself. And I do think if this fight was a year ago, Luque is a massive favorite in the spot. But I think Buckley's making the right improvements. I think Buckley's hungry at this spot with how hittable Luque is and how much his chin is still in question. I mean, it was only a year ago we were worried about brain bleeds. I mean, there was a brain bleed for Luque. So I think Buckley has the power to throw some adversity out there, has the wrestling to really try to pose some threats. And I do think the younger fighter here in Buckley has some upside. Gun to my head, yeah, I think it's truly 50-50. Depends on what version of Luque we get, but I might go with Buckley here. I mean, maybe cheer for the St. Louis guy, but a guy who is fresh, a guy who I can trust more at this point of his career, because I am still concerned about the state that Vicente Luque is in. So very close fight. I think as a whole, you know, the best DraftKings play, I mean, they're at the middle. You can take either one of them, but they don't either have the most wrestling upside. This could very well be a 15-minute striking affair, one where maybe Vicente Luque is more tentative than he's previously been. And if that's the case, maybe it doesn't rate out the best on DraftKings with so many high scorers here. Of course, that's a bit of a contrarian play. A lot of people are going to be on this fight because of the power they both have, and I understand it. But I might be a bit under the field considering I think it'd be a bit slower paced. I mean, Buckley historically, in his 2 decision wins, has scored 73 and 80, and I do think that there's a decision on the table here. Luque has scored better, but I mean, 64 points against Perry back in 2019, that is also on the table. Close fight, hard for me to pick. I might kind of stay away from it because of that. Gun to my head, though, I think I'm going to pick the guy here in Buckley, which I didn't expect to do, but have to after watching the recent tales of Luque. Should be a fun one. I hope for the best. Then main event time, we have ourselves the 12-1 Aaron Blanchfield versus the 11-1 Manon Fiorot. No other way to put it than striker versus grappler matchup. The phenomenal grappling of Aaron Blanchfield, phenomenal wrestling, has shown to be very dominant. Still very young, whereas Manon Fiorot, 11-1, incredible striker. It's an incredible kickboxer, and it seems to be a very, very fun stylistic matchup because of that. Does Aaron Blanchfield get off on her takedown? Does Fiorot piece her up on the feet? I don't know. And of course I have to go out there and mention that I do think the discrepancy is larger on the ground than it is in the feet. And I do think Blanchfield can have a ton of success taking her down here. But I think this line's getting a bit out of proportion. I think it was closer to -140, +110 for Blanchfield. There you go. There's my pick. I am picking Blanchfield here. But I don't think it's no runaway. I mean, Blanchfield is someone I like because of her wrestling, and she's someone who I think can dominate as the fight goes on. Very good positionally, can compete in the striking as well, but is a smart fighter who will go out there and get her positions. I don't think she goes out there and steamrolls Fiorot. I mean, Fiorot has great takedown defense, is very physical, and is going to be the much better striker with her ability to manage distance. And if that's the case, this could be one that I think could play out a lot closer than the line entails. I always do side with my grappler, and that's why I'm picking Blanchfield here, but I don't think she runs away with it, and that makes it for a very close dynamic, one where you could get a very greasy split decision, but one that I do think is very tightly contested, and one that, although I'm picking Blanchfield, if this line continues to rise for Fiorot, I might have a player here. DraftKings-wise, though, there's one side that stands out. That's the Blanchfield side. Averages 106 points in her win. Although she did only put up 80 against Santos last time, now she has 5 rounds to work. Phenomenal play at 8.8K. I do think she'll be able to have a ton of success. But Fiorot is also someone who's very live. I mean, she has a ton of power in her hands, very good volume. Doesn't have that same ceiling, but with 5 rounds to work, I mean, she's landed over 100 significant strikes. I do think she's going to have to make the moments in the feet impactful, and that makes her for a very live underdog of 7.4K. Like I said, this fight's close, so I don't really think that 7.4K justifies the way this fight could play out, so it should be a very close fare. Again, I'm going to be siding with the wrestler here in Blanchfield. I do think she gets it done. She's my preferred play on DraftKings, but It should be a very close fight, and I'm very much looking forward to it. But that's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm quickly running through my quick picks. I'm taking Aaron Blanchfield, Joaquin Buckley, Bruno Silva, Nursultan Ruziboev, Bill Algeo, Chidi Njokuani, Nate Landwehr, Lupita Godinez, Julio Arce, Connor Matthews, Ibo Aslan, Melissa Gatto, Jacob Malkoun, and Loughran. DraftKings wise, 14 fights. It's going to be really hard to narrow down your player pool, but a few of the matchup I like the most. Silva, Weirdman, Malkoun, Petroski, Aslan, Turkalj, Njokuani, McKee in that main event. It's a lot of fights to target, but I'm trying to narrow it down some more. Up top, I love Loughran, I love Silva, I love Malkoun. Want to get a bit different? I think Ruziboev and Algeo could be a bit different plays, but I prefer the first three I mentioned. Mid-range, Blanchfield, Njokuani, Aslan. Those are the three I'm liking in the 8,000 range. I think Emmers and Gatto are perfect contrarian plays, but not people I'm getting to as often as the first three I mentioned. As underdogs, my favorite underdogs as a whole are probably McKee, Matthews, and Fiorot. If you're looking for the big upside underdogs, I mean, I think Petroski, Weirdman, Fiorot, and even Herbert Burns are good plays down low. But hopefully what I said throughout the video is able to help you guys build your DraftKings lineups. Betting wise, I have nothing locked in yet. We'll see where I get to. I'm probably going to bet Melissa Gatto, probably going to bet Ibo Aslan. We're going to see where the rest of the lines take me, but be sure to follow me on Twitter at GorDo to see the final plays I post. And aside from that, best bets video will be out this weekend, as well as my content on established run, like I mentioned at the start of the video. Make sure to check that all out. Show some love, hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate everybody for checking you out. I wish you all the best of luck in all your DraftKings and betting endeavors. Let's make some money, guys.